Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with James Dickman. Coming up tonight, London's main headlines as a date is set for the Elizabeth line to join up across the capital. A catastrophic winter has been predicted by a senior exec at EDF as the price cap announcement on Friday looms. We'll also have an update on London's weather as well in the next 10 minutes. Also on the way, keep a box of tissues in sight as we hear the incredibly moving story of a mother of 3 from Wimbledon who ran across the Sahara 3 times to raise money for Macmillan after her father's death following a cancer diagnosis. And Osmonds, the musical coming to the new Wimbledon Theatre, will hear from one of the 5 brothers, Jay, about the retelling of the story about the boys from Utah who became one of the biggest boy bands on earth. That's all on the way, but first this evening, households face a dramatic and catastrophic winter. A senior energy firm executive has warned ahead of the increase in the price cap on bills. Energy bills are predicted to be nearly 4 times higher than last winter. Well, a household is considered to be in fuel poverty if it has to spend 10% or more of its disposable income on energy. From October, all UK households will start receiving payments providing a £400 discount on their fuel bills, with 8 million low-income households set to receive an additional £650. Philippe Commaret, EDF Energy's UK's managing director, told the BBC that the current level of support was much too low and called for additional help. He said EDF had seen a 30% rise in calls from customers under stress and struggling to pay their bills. Well, the announcement of the new price cap on Friday is expected to surpass more than £3,500 a year. There are fears that April 2023's price cap figure may be around £6,500 a year after wholesale gas prices spiked by £500 yesterday. Also today, sections of the Elizabeth line are set to be joined up, cutting the need for passengers to change trains, according to TfL today. From the 6th of November, trains will go from Reading and Heathrow to Abbey Wood and from Shenfield to Paddington. Bond Street Station will open in the autumn with more trains running as well. This will mean journeys between the capital's 2 key business districts and London's main airports will take just 40 to 50 minutes and bring the West End within 30 minutes of Heathrow. The Abbey Wood to Paddington section opened to passengers on the 24th of May. The line was meant to start running in December 2018, of course, but the £18.8 billion project has missed multiple targets as cost ballooned. Some other headlines today. 26 EasyJet flights in and out of Gatwick have been cancelled at short notice, with the airport blaming staff sickness. A spokesperson said the capital's second biggest airport was facing staff shortages in its air traffic control tower. Well, it came as Gatwick reported its half-year results, which said it was now very much operating business as usual, though. Thousands of people have been hit by flight cancellations and airport delays this summer. It comes after British Airways said they're to cut roughly 10,000 short-haul flights to and from Heathrow between late October and March next year. Some good news. Student nurse Awami Davies has been found safe and well in Hampshire almost 8 weeks after she went missing, the Metropolitan Police has said. The 24-year-old had last been seen walking north along London Road in Croydon on the 7th of July, having left her home in Grays in Essex on the 4th. Concerns had been growing for her safety after it was revealed she was likely to be wandering the capital and sleeping rough. Detectives revealed she has had a history of depression and she may have been using alcohol to help cope while Awami was studying nursing at King's College London. The call to the police that found her was the 118th reported sighting as of 10:30 this morning. The Victims Commissioner for London, Claire Waxman, has blamed Dominic Raab for the barristers' strike that starts on the 5th of September. Justice Secretary Raab accused criminal barristers of holding justice to ransom after it emerged he was on holiday when they voted in favour of an all-out strike over pay that will be indefinite and uninterrupted. Labour leader Keir Starmer claimed the government was doing absolutely nothing to resolve disputes, as an already hefty backlog of cases is set to mount further. A man accused of repeatedly stabbing an elderly mobility scooter rider has appeared at the Old Bailey today. 44-year-old Lee Byer is charged with murdering 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran in Greenford on the 16th of August. Mr O'Halloran, who was well known in the community and sustained multiple stab wounds to the neck, chest and abdomen, the court heard. He was on his way to busk in the local area by playing his accordion, according to his friend. Mr Byer, who has no fixed address, is set to appear at the same court for a plea hearing on the 8th of November and then to face trial in spring next year. The tube station where a car landed on the tracks after crashing off a West London road has partially reopened today. A 33-year-old woman died when the car she was travelling in crashed through a barrier, colliding with a stationary Tesla, then flying over onto the Piccadilly line at Park Royal in the early hours of Monday. A man in his 20s driving the 4x4 is in a critical condition in hospital, while another woman, passenger in her 20s, was also taken to hospital. The eastbound platform of Park Royal remains closed, though tubes are stopping at the station on the other side. Also, the Unite Union has announced more bus strikes that will affect around 63 routes in the capital today, mostly in west and southwest London, for 2 days over the bank holiday weekend. The action taking place on Sunday and Monday means some bus routes serving the Notting Hill Carnival will be affected. It is expected that other local bus, tube and rail services in these parts of the capital will be busier than usual on those days. Bus workers are taking the action in a dispute with TfL over pay. And a row has erupted over proposals to open a strip club in the basement of the Brazilian consulate building in London. Consulate General of Brazil said the plans by the firm Sophisticats for a late-night nude bar underneath its offices just off Oxford Street is absolutely inappropriate, and said it could violate the country's right to adequately perform its duties. The consulate occupies most of the 6-storey building in Vere Street, while the ground and basement floors are rented out separately. The New West End Company, who represent more than 600 businesses in and around Oxford Street and Mayfair, also objected to the proposals. Right, let's just take a look at the weather for you now. Overnight lows of around 14 degrees tonight, so a relatively warm sleep. Staying dry though. Tomorrow morning will start rather cloudy and a risk of an isolated shower or two, but sunny breaks will soon open up and develop across the day. Around 27 degrees at its peak tomorrow. Cooler Thursday and looking grey with a chance of some damp spells in the morning. Friday likely to brighten up though, back to around 26 degrees. Right, quickly before our first break, some football as the second round of the League Cup gets underway this evening. Premier League clubs make an entrance to the knockout tournament at this point, except for those teams in European competitions who start their Carabao Cup campaign in the third round. Well, let's take a look at the London clubs in action this evening. League One side Charlton travel to League Two opponents Walsall to get us underway in just under an hour at 7 o'clock this evening. Fulham, recently promoted to the Premier League, travel to Crawley Town, who sit right toward the bottom of League Two. 7:45 kick-off there. Interestingly, all the bigger clubs are travelling away this evening, as Brentford, who took on Fulham in that Derby Day thriller in the Prem on Saturday, travel to Colchester this evening. Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace travel to play League One side Oxford United. And Watford, however, are the only ones not travelling actually in the Championship, of course, at home, welcoming MK Dons to Vicarage Road. Now, we're heading into a quick break now, but in a few minutes, advice for homeowners as one mortgage specialist says the best way to combat rising interest rates and mounting debt is to consolidate. Find out why.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Let's just take a look at some main UK headlines that will be affecting Londoners. A regular energy industry exercise aimed at preparing the UK for the possibility of a gas supply emergency has been scaled up, despite the government downplaying the threat of shortages this winter. The annual drill will see potential scenarios including rationing electricity, war games over the 4 days rather than the usual 2 as energy concerns grow. Industry insiders linked the drill's extension to the seriousness of the energy challenges forecast this winter. Almost 1,300 migrants crossed the English Channel in small boats yesterday, setting a new record for crossings in a single day. The Ministry of Defence said they made the crossing in 27 boats, which topped the previous high of 1,185 in November last year. It is the highest daily total since current records began in 2018. So far this month, around 6,200 people have made the crossing in the boats. That's nearly double the figure for last month. The number of house sales in July jumped up by a third compared to last year, as the typical summer spike in demand increased activity, according to figures from HMRC. House sales were also up by 7% on the previous month, which saw a slowdown in demand, in line with a shortage of properties up for sale. Right, staying with homes, it's no secret that every penny counts at the moment, and UK homeowners' debt is expected to grow by £4.4 billion. New research from YouGov has found that the recent rise in interest rates could cost British homeowners dearly, with a likely increase of £2.8 billion on revolving credit payments like credit cards and overdrafts, and a further £1.6 billion on personal or unsecured loans. Well, Paula John, a journalist and mortgage specialist, joined me to talk through some helpful tips if you're worried about your monthly payments skyrocketing across the board.
Essentially, it's research carried out by Pepper Money, which is a mortgage lender. So they did some research on consumers who own their own properties already, looking at the unsecured debt they have. So when you have a mortgage, that's secured on your property, but most people who have a mortgage will also have credit cards, maybe store cards, maybe an overdraft, etc. As you say, interest rates are going up on everything. The cost of all borrowing is going up. So they looked at the impact of this on homeowners with a view to giving some direction as to what you can actually do about the cost of rising credit, about meeting those repayments. Obviously, it depends on the extent of your debt, but one of the options that more people have started to consider, and in fact, a record number of people took out loans last month to consolidate those debts. It's something called a second charge mortgage. Not everyone's heard of it, but it's where you wrap up all of those other debts, bring them together and have them secured against your property.
Why is that a recommended idea? Because for a lot of people, for laymen such as myself, a lot of what you just said straight over my head, or a lot of people might not understand the details or the small prints. It's quite hard to get through to people the best ideas to do financially sometimes, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Let me try and unpack that for you a little bit then. Basically, a debt consolidation loan is one where you bring together all of your other debts, whether that might be credit cards, store cards, overdrafts, car loans. You put them in one place so that you know what your monthly repayments are going to be. Now, if you have to own your own home in order to have one of these debt consolidation loans, some people might say, well, why not just remortgage, add the other debt onto my mortgage and do all of my repayments in one place? Well, most people who have a mortgage have a fixed rate mortgage. 96% of people who've taken out a mortgage in the last 3 years have got a fixed rate mortgage. And until recently, they were very, very cheap. So you might have a fixed rate mortgage at 1.5% or 2.5%, for example. If you remortgage to add other debts onto that, you're looking at a rate now of 2.5%, 3.5%, 4.5%. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense to increase your borrowing against your property in that way. What you might want to consider doing, and it's not for everyone and you need to take financial advice, but is taking out a debt consolidation loan alongside your mortgage, where you will be paying a higher rate on that bit, but it allows you to keep the two separate. So you keep your main mortgage at its nice low rate, and then you take a further second charge mortgage to consolidate your debts running alongside that.
Yeah. The news yesterday said that perhaps inflation's going to hit 18% next year. Interest rates are likely to go up again, perhaps even this year another 0.25%, and maybe a couple of times before 2023. How does that affect all of this and what you're saying?
Basically, interest rates going up it's inevitability. The only argument among economists is how far they're going to go. Some are saying 2.75% by the end of the year, some 3%, some 4%. That's going to impact everybody with any sort of borrowing, unless you have a fixed rate mortgage, which the vast majority of people in the UK do, fortunately, so they will be protected to an extent on their main mortgage. However, the cost of any other sort of borrowing, anything on a variable rate will become more expensive. So essentially, if you've got all of that on top of the rising cost of energy, food prices, everything is costing more and more and more. So it's a really good time for anyone with any debts to take a look at their finances, speak to a financial advisor, see if there's any way that you can organise your debts more attractively, no debt is attractive, is it? But in the most cost-effective way. And what you might find is that if you've got lots of debt scattered around the place, it makes sense to bring them all together, to have control over them, and to know exactly how much you're going to be paying on a monthly basis.
Paula with some very helpful tips for homeowners there. Now to something a bit more uplifting now. A mother of 3 from Wimbledon has taken charity running to the next level. After losing her father to kidney cancer, Karen O'Donnell and her family have raised more than £50,000 for Macmillan by running the Sahara not once, but 3 times. Karen has been telling Alicia how she did it and what's next.
My father died about 7 years ago of cancer. And he was relatively young. He was 68, which is quite young now. A wonderful man. We had a fabulous relationship, and Macmillan were just brilliant with him. He was very fortunate that he lived in an area which had a great oncology hospital, but still, with the hospitals, the doctors and the nurses are so busy. It's really hard for them to find time. And the Macmillan, the 2 nurses he was assigned, Pippa and Jan, I think I remember her name, they were just really good at talking to my parents, trying to make it a bit less scary for them. And although my father was unfortunately going to be the one group of in the cancer sufferers who was going to die relatively quickly, he survived about 11 months after his diagnosis, they just talked him through it and just made it a little bit, a bit less scary. And so I was really motivated to try and help them. Ultimately, 2 million people have cancer at any one time in this country. And I think the Macmillan nurses do a fantastic job.
You say in those moments when, you're injured, you're trying to push through, what is it that keeps you going?
Bizarrely, it's actually a phrase that I remember running London Marathon once, and it was actually the day before my father had died, and I'd been up in Yorkshire where at the hospice where he was. I'd come down quickly the night before, run the London Marathon, and then shot up, and unfortunately didn't make it back for when he died. I remember that London Marathon, which I think was the slowest ever I ran London, because I was quite poorly. And I heard a lady when I came through one of the tunnels. I remember a stranger shouting, "Dig deep," and that's all I could hear. And it's a phrase I always think about. When I've run the Marathon des Sables and other races, whenever I find it hard, I just switch my head to go, dig deep, dig deep. And, that's it.
Yeah, it's for a very important cause, and inevitably that digging deep is working because you have achieved the unachievable. I mean, not just how many that you've done, but also how much money that you've raised. As a family as well, you've all got on board, haven't you, together?
Yeah, we have. I mean, the children have always kind of slightly got an absent mother when I'm in training and when I go and do my ultras. They all did come out to the end of the first Marathon des Sables to cheer me on, which was fantastic. And then the second one, my husband came with me to run, which unfortunately was quite a difficult Marathon des Sables. I mean, it's difficult anyway. This was a very difficult one, and John unfortunately had to pull out. And then we went back together to do a third time, which was in March this year, which was fantastic. And we both completed it.
Other people who maybe might find what you've done a little bit daunting, what other opportunities are there? What can people be doing to raise money for Macmillan if they'd like to?
Well, Macmillan are great because they do 2 fantastic things. One involves lots of exercise and one involves lots of eating cake. Both are great. And actually, if you do both together, that's even better. So you can join one of the mighty hikes. They do them from Scotland down to Cornwall. Loads of them in September. So if you look on the website now, you can see it. And then I think the next coffee morning, which many people will know, the Macmillan coffee morning, is on the 30th of September. So do a bit of exercise, then go and eat some cake.
And finally, Karen, what is next? What's in your sights now?
I'll never say never about going back to the Marathon des Sables. I may well go back. But I always think when you're raising money for charity by doing an event, you always feel you need to push it that bit further. So I remember when I first started, I'd run London and raise some money, and then the next time it would be 100k, and then it leads you to the Marathon des Sables. And then you think, actually, I can't just go back and do the Marathon des Sables. I've got to do something a bit bigger. I'll think about hopefully events with my children. They're all becoming of age now where they might be able to accompany their mother, although I might be a bit slower. I am going in February to Costa Rica, which has an event called the Coastal Challenge, which is similar distance to the Marathon des Sables. So it's about 250 kilometres over 6 days. But it's through jungle, it's very humid and quite a lot of climb. But the benefit is with the Costa Rica, you don't have to be self-sufficient and carry all your own food. And I'm led to believe that they cook very nice barbecues for you after you've finished your long run every day.
Best of luck to Karen there on all her future endeavours. Now you're watching London Live News with James Dickman. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, new London stats on hair loss show the detrimental effects it can have on your mental health. More on that next.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News this evening. Let's just have a reminder of the main stories we've been running that affect the capital today. Households face a dramatic and catastrophic winter, according to a senior energy firm exec, and he's warned ahead of the increase in the price cap on bills on Friday. Energy bills are predicted to be nearly 4 times higher than last winter. Well, a household is considered to be in fuel poverty if it has to spend 10% or more of its disposable income on energy. From October, all UK households will start receiving payments providing a £400 discount on their fuel bills, with 8 million low-income households set to receive an additional £650. Philippe Commaret, EDF Energy's UK's managing director, told the BBC that the current level of support was much too low and called for additional help. He said EDF had seen a 30% rise in calls from customers under stress and struggling to pay their bills. Well, the announcement of the new price cap on Friday is expected to surpass more than £3,500 a year. There are fears that April 2023's price cap figure may be around £6,500 a year after wholesale gas prices spiked by £500 yesterday. Also today, sections of the Elizabeth line are set to be joined up, cutting the need for passengers to change trains, according to TfL today. From the 6th of November, trains will go from Reading and Heathrow to Abbey Wood and from Shenfield to Paddington. Bond Street Station will open in the autumn with more trains running as well. This will mean journeys between the capital's 2 key business districts and London's main airports will take just 40 to 50 minutes and bring the West End within 30 minutes of Heathrow. The Abbey Wood to Paddington section opened to passengers on the 24th of May. The line was meant to start running in December 2018, of course, but the £18.8 billion project has missed multiple targets as cost ballooned. Some other headlines today. 26 EasyJet flights in and out of Gatwick have been cancelled at short notice, with the airport blaming staff sickness. A spokesperson said the capital's second biggest airport was facing staff shortages in its air traffic control tower. Well, it came as Gatwick reported its half-year results, which said it was now very much operating business as usual, though. Thousands of people have been hit by flight cancellations and airport delays this summer. It comes after British Airways said they're to cut roughly 10,000 short-haul flights to and from Heathrow between late October and March next year. Some good news. Student nurse Awami Davies has been found safe and well in Hampshire almost 8 weeks after she went missing, the Metropolitan Police has said. The 24-year-old had last been seen walking north along London Road in Croydon on the 7th of July, having left her home in Grays in Essex on the 4th. Concerns had been growing for her safety after it was revealed she was likely to be wandering the capital and sleeping rough. Detectives revealed she has had a history of depression and she may have been using alcohol to help cope while Awami was studying nursing at King's College London. The call to the police that found her was the 118th reported sighting as of 10:30 this morning. The Victims Commissioner for London, Claire Waxman, has blamed Dominic Raab for the barristers' strike that starts on the 5th of September. Justice Secretary Raab accused criminal barristers of holding justice to ransom after it emerged he was on holiday when they voted in favour of an all-out strike over pay that will be indefinite and uninterrupted. Labour leader Keir Starmer claimed the government was doing absolutely nothing to resolve disputes, as an already hefty backlog of cases is set to mount further. A man accused of repeatedly stabbing an elderly mobility scooter rider has appeared at the Old Bailey today. 44-year-old Lee Byer is charged with murdering 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran in Greenford on the 16th of August. Mr. O'Halloran, who was well known in the community and sustained multiple stab wounds to the neck, chest and abdomen, the court heard. He was on his way to busk in the local area by playing his accordion, according to his friend. Mr. Byer, who has no fixed address, is set to appear at the same court for a plea hearing on the 8th of November and then to face trial in spring next year. Now, don't accuse us on this show of going from important stories to the trivial, as next we'll be discussing a stigma around hair loss. Around 70% of women in London say they feel that they are judged for suffering from it, and around 56% say a taboo remains in place for wearing wigs. Well, research from the brand Vagamore say that it has a big impact on people's mental health. Dan from the company was with me to discuss the issue.
2 out of 5 women in the UK will experience hair loss at some point in their lives. That's nearly 45% of the population. It can often have a severe psychological impact. Our studies also indicate that 40% of women who suffer hair loss in the UK experience feelings of shame, embarrassment, and depression. So the psychological impact is quite severe in some cases.
Yeah, particularly here in London where the social scene's so important. Everyone's going into offices every day. You're constantly looking at other people. It's a very young, vibrant city, of course. That can really exacerbate the problem, can't it?
Absolutely, in the way that beauty aesthetics and goals are portrayed in the media and in social media, on TV and film. A lot of times we compare our looks and our hair to people's that have been professionally made or have had hair extensions added, which greatly amplifies the volume and the aesthetic, and sets a near impossible standard for us normal mortals to live up to, and so therefore further exacerbating that lack of confidence that we feel when we feel that our hair looks good.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it, of recent years. What can be done to treat hair loss, and is there a miracle cure yet? It doesn't seem to be one. But what can people do to deal with the fact that they're losing their hair, firstly, but then also what can they do to help, try and regenerate?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I would say the number one thing you could do is to not stress about it, because the stress is only further exacerbating to the problem. We find that making sure that you get enough sleep, 7 to 8 hours of sleep is so important for maintaining, hair health. Similarly, avoiding stressors in your life if you can. A lot of us live in have a very stressful lifestyle. And so what steps can you take to mitigate that? Sometimes a mindful meditation practice or yoga, making sure that you eat the healthy foods, you get the right amount of nutrition. These are all things that you can do on a day-to-day basis, lifestyle choices that have a huge impact on our hair health. The other thing that we can do to make sure that we're optimizing our hair health is to look at the labels of the products that we're putting into our hair. A lot of us spend a lot of money on organic produce and clean skincare and hair and color cosmetics. synthetic products, but we kind of threw out that level of consciousness around the hair products that we use. And so we want to make sure that there's not silicons, dimethicones, synthetic fragrances, phthalates, parabens. These are all things that when you're applying to your hair, you're actually applying to the most porous part of your body. That's your scalp. And so we're absorbing all these chemicals into our system, and those are definitely not conducive to having healthy hair.
Yeah, less is more then, is that right, Dan?
Well, less is more. Less chemicals, less synthetic things are far better for you than more of those. But you can augment your hair health by applying, healthy products and botanically derived actives to further help augment your hair health.
Define for us hair wellness, because you guys talk about that, and what it exactly means as a kind of theory, as a way of living your life through your hair.
Yeah, hair wellness. Our approach with hair wellness is, first of all, it's a clean approach using, thoughtfully derived plant botanicals and making them bioavailable in formulations that can be applied topically or ingested, that deal with not just the symptoms, because in our world today we tend to wait for the event to occur and then figure out how to put that fire out, and rather than dealing with the issue before it occurs. We practice a philosophy we call prejuvenation with regard to hair wellness. And so that is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's far easier to keep your hair than it is to lose it.
There you go. Sleep well, don't stress, and your hair will be all right. Good advice for anyone there. Now, we are taking a quick break now, but still to come. An exhibition on the routes of the Notting Hill Carnival to wet your whistle ahead of its jubilant return this bank holiday weekend.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of this evening's programme. Now, with Notting Hill Carnival preparing to return this weekend after 3 years out, an exhibition covering carnivals of the past is preparing to open at the Muswell Hill Gallery following the weekend of celebrations in West London. The exhibition features 10 photographs that document London's African Caribbean community taken by photographer Charlie Phillips. He previously released the book Notting Hill in the 60s in 1991, containing the collection which will now be displayed in North London.
Over the last 60 years, I've been documenting London life regarding the Afro-Caribbean community, and now after 50 years, by public demand, we're coming up to the 7th generation, and our generation we're not well represented, I feel, in some of the museums or galleries. Well, some of the photographs I would date back to 1960s, and the structure of it, as I said, we're coming up to the 7th generation, and we hardly see ourselves. Well, nowadays we hardly see any representation of ourselves, and it's telling our story, because our story is mostly being documented by historians or social workers or community workers. Yeah, and these photographs are from a grassroots level, because I'm from a grassroots community. And I guess that's what the exhibition is all about. I don't know if I fit into galleries or museum full time, but it's nice to put my work also in private galleries as well. Notting Hill in the 60s. Yeah, well, that's the first book that's came out, and since then we've got Roots to Reckon In, and the other one we've got Our Great Heart, deals about Afro-Caribbean funerals over the last 60 years, because that's a subject that's been changed as well, the tradition. As I said, we're coming up to the 7th generation, and we're beginning to lose some of our traditions. Notting Hill Gate in the 60s was about early life for the Afro-Caribbean community, living in one room and housing and urban landlords, and which we documented. And the pictures, and some of the pictures, I've lost a lot, because when I wanted to publish some more books, the publishers thought they wouldn't sell, but people are making demands, especially from an educational point of view, especially from a social point of view as well. Yeah. And some of my photographs, especially the early ones, you have a lot of sociology students and art students as well, because it deals with our fashion, our style, our mode of living, and I'm glad that after all these years, the community or Londoners has taken it upon themselves to admire my work. I thought I'd have a nice, peaceful retirement, and I'm so surprised that lots of young kids are interested in my work. I thought I'd have a nice, peaceful retirement. All I wanted to do was catch up on my reading with War and Peace and spend more time in my allotment. But by public demand, with this young generation who hasn't been properly represented culturally or historically, this is what I came out of retirement, and I just can't say no, because I feel I have an obligation to my community.
There you go, Charlie Phillips there. The archive exhibition runs at the Muswell Hill Gallery from Thursday the 1st of September to Tuesday the 6th. Now, finally, tonight, it's been announced that a new musical will tell the story of 5 boys from Utah that were pushed into the spotlight as children. Written by one of the 5 children, Jay Osmond's musical features a list of 1970s anthems and is set to reveal the real family behind the hits. Directed by Sean Kerrison and choreographed by Bill Deemer, Jay Osmond tells us about the play.
What are you doing tonight? You got no place to go. Gotta get out of the city. Why don't you come along with me?
The plot of the play basically is about how I see my family growing up as an Osmond and what we went through. And it's kind of like take people on this journey where we go back where Walt Disney discovered us and how that affected us and how we changed from from Ogden, Utah to Los Angeles and it goes through the different phases of our lives through my eyes, of course, how I saw it. And then I take people to the 60s and then the 70s, which was just a whirlwind, and then the 80s, but I wanted mostly to show people in this play how much I love and respect my family and what people don't know what we went through. Now I know a lot of it's out there and it's nothing new because information is out there about this play, but I wanted it to be shown through my eyes in a living memoir, which is on stage. And the reviews are exactly how I wanted it to come out. People come out, this is what they're saying, they come out feeling lifted, motivated, with hope and a love for family and purpose. And so it's got everything that I've wanted, but it's taken me and some great writers to help me crunch it together and producers. A lot of work because how do you take 60 years, 30 songs and all those memories up and down into 2 hours, you know what I mean? But Bill Deemer, who is a great, amazing professional, he's put a professional touch on this, and everybody, I'm just so grateful for the team involved. The cast and crew are amazing, and it's almost surreal to see your life being played out, in front of you like this. But it's really interesting. And I love to listen to how people respond. I wanted everything, how they're responding. They feel like they're 15 years old again, but also the new ones. That's what's interesting to me too, is not just the ones that have been with us for all those years, but the new fans that are coming on board and what they're saying about it and how it just makes them feel alive and fun for it. I think what it is just something that's fun for all members and of the family and for every age, because it goes through all those different ages. And then I also show all the different genres of music that we as a family have been through and some of their heart-wrenching stories that people are crying at the right moments, people are singing at the right moments, and they're laughing at the right moments, and they're dancing, and it just, I think, especially after COVID now, all that terrible time, it gives people something to a fun night out and something you can remember about my family that I want people to remember, and so that's basically, there's so much I could go on for hours about it, but there's so much to it. It's so compact and there's layers. We go back in with time, like there's a small set of brothers, there's a big set of brothers, and it's about a band of brothers that stick together and they have each other's back, and it's just so wonderful to see it played out so well with these actors and singers and dancers. They're just wow. I couldn't be more blessed to see it this way, and of course the reviews have been wonderful. So I'm just thrilled, and especially now at this time of my life to see it reenacted like this, it's been wonderful. 5 years ago, when the Bose Anderson came to me and I was writing my book, and he says, put it in a living memoir. And so my sweet wife, boy, she typed every word that I said, and it took 5 years. And then I got with some good other writers to help me crunch it, and then some great producers, and then Bill Deemer and all these other wonderful people. The casting part was really difficult for me because I wanted it to be so close. And when I find it like I found it, that we matched it. I mean, I was looking for personalities. Of course, they had to sing and dance and play instruments, but they had to match the personality. And we just, the guy who plays Father Charlie and my mother, Nicola, and then the person who plays Marie, it's just, and me and Donnie and Alan and Jim. It's just like it's like watching my family, and I'm so proud of it, and I'm pleased to see how it all came out. And but it's been a process. It's been a tough process, and it is not easy to write a musical, and to make it really live, and to see people respond when you want them to respond, and the stories are heart wrenching. Some of them.
If you're all alone, you won't be long. Just bring your guitar and sing a song. Down by the lazy river, everybody follow me.
There you go, that comes to the New Wimbledon Theatre. It starts tonight. Right, let's just take a look at the weather before we leave you. Overnight lows of around 19 degrees tonight, so a relatively warm sleep. Staying dry though. Tomorrow morning will start with rather cloudy skies and a risk of an isolated shower or two, but sunny breaks will soon start to widely develop, around 27 degrees. It's cooler Thursday and looking grey with a chance of some damp spells. Friday, it's likely to brighten up back to around 26, 27 degrees. Right, that is all we've got time for this evening. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow at the very same time, but for now, good evening and take care.